Hodge? Hodge, old man, are you here? Hodge, open the door, it's cold. And I've no company but these winds and snows. Hodge!
Go away. I was dear friends with your master, not you, boy. Be on your way. Ulrich's passing has seen you fare ill, apprentice. Now all you do is wander these lands, feeding that insidious cube with the souls of those travelers and innocent folk you meet. I'll have none of it. Nor would your teacher. You shame him. Explain yourself. Speak.
You are wise, old man, and always were. Perhaps even wiser than Ulrich himself. But there's no stopping what's to come. And my deeds are not insidious, as you say. It's the opposite. You see, Ulrich taught me all too well. And I am a curator, and keeper, and protector, not devourer. Now, let me in, and I will explain everything. For everything is exactly what I can explain, with the secrets contained here in the RPG mainframe. Greetings, programs. It's your old buddy Hankrin Furnell here, back once again with the podcast that is made to last, and you know it's true. Because the last episode was in 2022. Actually, that's not true. The last episode was episode 72. Welcome to episode 73 of the RPG Mainframe. This is where we discuss all things role-playing, Runehammer, and its glorious fans, the Shield Wall. Hi, everybody. We're back once again, and for this episode, I don't have a special guest this time around. It's just little old me here kicking in the workshop. And I wanted to crack open an iron chest of deep thinking that should find all of you in good standing with your own comprehension, your own habits, your own relationship to your own knowledge. Now, that's a little bit of a messy intro, but I guess I'm kind of known for messy intros. The idea basically being for this one is I wanted to talk a little bit about seeing how what you know is limiting you from what you may not be experiencing, right? And that is the sloppiest title that you could give a podcast. So let's give it a cool and exciting title, and that is The Dr. Manhattan Syndrome. Hit that intro music.
This is Runehammer.
All right, so let's get into this idea and hopefully how this idea can help you in your day-to-day role-playing journey as a hobbyist. Now, first of all, I assume that everybody listening to the RPG Mainframe is an aspirant, right? An aspirant is somebody who's always reaching a little bit, who wants to go a little further. They call me the seeker. I've been searching low and high, right? That's you. And you're not just sort of in a group and perfectly content and rocking along week after week. You're kind of on a journey of looking for what's next, or even, I think more importantly, and to greater effect, looking within and making the journey of self-examination to find new frontiers of creativity. And those frontiers could be large or small, right? On the small side, your sort of self-examination might be just to get an idea for an upcoming session, right? Lord knows I do this every stinking week. I've got a session tomorrow night, and after that, I have a 2-day marathon. These things are back to back, right? And I need little ideas. I've got the big ones, I think, but I need little ideas to make sure that these sessions not just pop, but that they have emotional content and that they have gravity. And so I might be asking myself about, well, what do I have to draw from? Where am I at? What do I want to see happen at the table, right? And then I get these small ideas. Now, on the converse side of it, sometimes self-examination can lead to these big ideas. And big ideas are kind of like, they can be methodological. A big methodology idea might be, man, I've been doing XYZ just as a kind of default method. What if I just radically shift or upgrade that method to change how my games are coming across, how much, sort of player time I get, how to make turns go faster, which is a challenge all of us are constantly facing without rushing a game, right? But maybe it's not that. Maybe it's existential or even spiritual, right? You need to look inside and you say, why am I doing such a thing? Or why did I get so upset about that one thing? Or why was I so let down? And I had this crummy feeling after something I'd been excited for a month. And then the next day, I have this come down that's kind of horrible. Why is that? And I need to look at, well, did I not get what I was hoping for? Did I screw something up? Did somebody say something that was offbeat? Did I build up my hopes too high? And can I actively change that in the future, right? All of these are big realizations that come from self-examination. But what I want to propose with the Dr. Manhattan syndrome is just a working daily awareness of what you're missing out on because you know too damn much. Now, take a little journey with me here before you say, wait a minute, this is another one of these silly Runehammer concepts where I spend 45 minutes listening to a podcast and then I go, what just happened? What did I just listen to? Okay, so let's return to the root sort of character that inspired this podcast today, and that is, of course, Dr. Manhattan from the Watchmen, this sort of infinite quantum level being who is a scientist named John Osterman, who is basically ripped to pieces in this kind of quantum reactor experiment and thereby becomes this godlike sort of superhero. But in the process of being rebuilt on the quantum level, he also sort of loses his emotions. And he basically trades his humanity for this infinity. And at first it seems like I see everything, I know everything, wow, this is going to be crazy. But he's a very sad character, right? And this is part of the sort of existential deep think of the Watchmen, is that, sort of super beings come with all this baggage. And Dr. Manhattan maybe even has the worst baggage of them all, right? Which is that his emotions are sort of detached, and yet he has this infinite knowledge that extends even backward and forward in time. And the one moment I really want to zoom in on here with Dr. Manhattan to make this point is when he's sitting on Mars, kind of staring out at the stars and being baleful and being sad and feeling detached and getting sort of road weary or time weary with humanity's problems, and how people are driven by emotion and by quarrel. And he's kind of tired, and he looks up at the stars, and his knowledge is so deep of the universe that he knows he's actually not even looking at the stars. He doesn't even get to enjoy that because the light takes so long to reach his eyes. And he's also looking at this sort of old photo back when he was human and he was in love. And he says this line that I really want to zoom in on for today's podcast, which is that all we ever see of the stars are old photographs, right? And it's this sort of sad and tired kind of look at the universe itself, right? At Dr. Manhattan's sort of lonely reality. Right? And he's like, I'm just going to be in all times and places and sit here and just whoa, man, this kind of sucks, right? Okay. So with that consideration of our podcast's namesake, Dr. Manhattan, I want you to join me in a little bit of an exercise and put yourself into that situation. I want you to be Dr. Manhattan for a moment and feel what it's like to feel knowing all these things. But let's not make it about the universe. Let's just make it about role-playing. You know, if you're listening to the RPG Mainframe, if you're in the Runehammer Shield Wall, if you're on Runehammer Discord, the odds are that you are deeply invested and involved in the conversation of role-playing, right? And you are thinking about this maybe even daily. And you probably have vast experience with multiple systems and different books and different publishers, even different styles of play, different rhythms of play, combat systems, dice mechanics, spiritual advice, your favorite YouTubers. It goes on and on. Favorite food for a session, best place to play, the position at the table you prefer, how you build a fighter, how you build a monk and a druid. You have a huge nebula of role-playing knowledge at your command if you are the listener that I think you are. So at first, sit there, and like Dr. Manhattan, in part of his story, there is an enjoyment to all this knowledge, and by extension, power. There should be. You have worked hard for this. You study. You read. Every weekend, maybe, you spend a little time with some books and with your journal. Maybe you have a weekly game or a bi-weekly game with friends, and that informs the other game you play where you GM online. And feel this. Look at it as a totality. Look at all that you know and can do in this hobby. Maybe you're like me and you like to paint, build miniatures, build terrain. Really build anything is fun. And all the different techniques and videos you've watched and all the trials and the failures and the successes of that hobbying, that's all yours to enjoy in this first step. Now there's a second step, and this is trying to see where you're missing out. Where is all this expertise and knowledge keeping you from enjoying something? Now, this is not an easy answer to find. It's not even easy to see as we sit here and we do this meditation together. I look at my own case, and I'm trying to overcome one of my biggest hurdles in this area right now because I did this exact activity accidentally about a week ago, and this is when I started jotting down notes for the podcast. And what I looked at was I found myself saying, a lot. Is that a word? I don't know. I guess you'd spell it E-A-G-H. And it's because I've gotten myself so deep into selection and quality analysis and depth and playability and all these different systems and ideas inside this fun hobby of ours. I am so often just kind of gauging a thing by the data that I gather about it. And I think right away, I am missing out on 75% of what can be fun about an idea. And then once the old adage that when you break up, when your relationship ends, every song that you turn on the radio just sounds like a breakup song. That's exactly what happened to me. I kind of had this realization, am I blocking out opportunities and sources of fun just because I kind of know too much? And then the first thing I do is I kind of start looking and keeping up with various messages online and so forth, right? And I suddenly started seeing all these posts by all these kind of RPG old-timers who are buying the new Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide and ripping it apart, being, hypercritical about it. And this was a direct, the universe was clap backing on me. The universe was speaking right back to me in this language about do we reach a point where we have too much experience and we're overcritical and we think that what you find inside of a book is just going to translate one-to-one to a table, and so we kind of opt out? Have we reached a point where our tastes are so solidified that we're missing new experiences? Have we gotten so used to eating Subway that we don't eat like the spicy hero anymore? And I don't think there's a right answer here. I don't think there's a way that you can feel that Dr. Manhattan feeling. Man, maybe I know too much about this stuff. I don't think you can feel that in an honest way and come away with an easy answer of what to do next. And that, to me, is something that makes for a juicy topic here on the Mainframe, because it isn't really just about telling you what to do with your hobby, right? It isn't like my quick YouTube video last week or so, where I'm like, yeah, try making some terrain that's like hex-shaped out of styrofoam, because it really kind of interlocks in a really handy way, right? That's not the level that the RPG Mainframe works at. We work at this level of there's kind of topics without easy answers, because all of us do these introspections in our own context. So the internet is yelling back at me that so many fellow hobbyists, which I'm sure if we just sat down in person, we would absolutely get along just swimmingly, come off with this tone that, oh man, this is garbage. Don't waste your time on this. Just go back into the past, right? All we see of the stars is old photographs, right? It's this kind of baleful attitude, like, the past is really as good as things are going to get. All we get is like a faded image of the past nowadays. That's all that this is. And I think I got sort of my answer to my introspection about the Dr. Manhattan syndrome. And that is that I have just begun my journey to climb out of all that. And I think this is why maybe some folks out in Runehammer area are a little surprised to see me playing D&D 5.5 with fervor and with interest and with excitement and enthusiasm. And it isn't just because I own a game shop now and I need to sell DMGs. That is not it at all. It's honest enthusiasm. And I've been super critical on the internet of 5th edition. But, in those first couple years when the 5th edition Monster Manual came out, oh man, was it juicy and tasty and fun and fresh. And to me, I think this is maybe one possible answer to this kind of strange feeling of like, am I so deep in this that, I've kind of lost some of the innocence of it, And for me, the big answer that got me so excited to record such an obtuse topic into a podcast is that I kind of felt reinforced a bit. I kind of felt happy, like right out of the gate, that I wasn't sitting on Mars, gazing into the stars, wishing it was 1993 again. I was actually excited it was today. Now, the world has innumerable problems right now. So the world of today is, as we all know, extremely stressful, extremely uncertain. It's kind of yelling at us and then not really helping us. It's a tough world to be in right now. But the RPG Mainframe is not about the entire world. It is a respite from a lot of that to think about our hobby in deep and existential and self-examining ways. And when I look at just that part of present reality, it is absolutely awesome. And yes, I do publish my own RPGs, and I need them to be appreciated and frankly purchased for them to get stickiness and to make it to tables and have a lasting capability, but not to the exclusion of all this other cool stuff. And not to the exclusion of so-called mainstream stuff, right? I never really noticed when it became so cool to dislike D&D. And I guess some people would say the OGL thing, but please keep in mind that the OGL thing never actually happened. It never occurred. So to me, it's very strange to be angry about a thing that never actually occurred. There was a moment that Wizards of the Coast was considering the change to reclaim their IP from the DIY community. And I still think that was going to be a great move for them to truly own their IP. Not everybody just hands their IP out and lets people run wild with it and make money off of it. That was a generosity that I don't think should be taken for granted. But after widespread fan response, they didn't do it. How is that not what we wanted? I thought that the feedback mechanism that occurred from audience to publisher to recanting on this decision to reclaim IP in a more, honestly, I think, smart way as a company. Instead, they chose generosity. They chose openness. The so-called scandal never occurred. And yet here we are, almost 2 years later. And there's this, or is it 1 year later? No, it is. It's almost 2 years later. And there's this popularity of like hating on D&D. And I think that a lot of it is coming from this Dr. Manhattan syndrome. It is having seen too many rises and falls and looking back with such a fixation on past events, as Dr. Manhattan describes it, these faded photographs, right? The light from long dead stars. I don't even get to look at a star. That's how sad I am, because all I'm seeing is old light. But this mindset fails to notice that in this moment, you're seeing that little twinkle, right? It fixates on the negative because of seeing this too wide view. Okay, so I think I've made my point, and it really does land on Wizards of the Coast D&D, like D&D proper, right? D&D by name, as one of its sort of poster boys. Like, if you're into this hobby the way that I'm into this hobby, which I assume you are because you're here listening to this podcast, you owe a great creative debt to Dungeons & Dragons proper, D&D by name, right? You really do, and to its creators, both past and present. They are leading innovators. Now, this does not leave out the numerous other influences we have. Like, I've been gaining a growing respect for Free League, and I was pretty critical of Free League here and there. But more and more, they really are starting to deeply influence how I think and play. And I think you could say the same for any of these sort of lasting and enduring team-thinking brands, like Paizo, like Goodman Games, Kobold Press, Green Ronin, even this sort of old-timers like Steve Jackson, right? They just keep going, and we all probably owe them these creative debts we may not even always see. And to sort of go with the wind, the prevailing wind of the day, and kind of say, well, walnuts taste horrible. Because I've had every kind of nut under the sun. And I'll tell you, walnuts were also tastier 10 years ago. Just like, what? I thought these were pretty tasty. I'm just kind of, tasty walnut. It's on my apple salad here. Delicious. So all of the RPG Mainframe episodes lead to some kind of actionable concept, right? If I'm not giving you an actionable concept, then we're just kind of wandering around in word salad. So what do we do, with this Dr. Manhattan syndrome silliness? I'll tell you, don't hoard what you know. Let go of it. And I've done another podcast, it must have been 30 episodes or so ago, called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind is a time-honored concept, far older than I, or even its more modern champions, which is that the greatest joy is always found for the beginner. The less you know, the more fun a thing is. And this is the other side of the Dr. Manhattan concept, right? It's the bright-eyed starter. Like a lot of us I know joke, hey, you're in my session tonight. Have you ever played any D&D at all? And they're like, no, never even rolled a single die. And the GM's face lights up with happiness and sadism, right? They're like, ooh, fresh meat for the grinder. So just like in the Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind podcast, I think the way that we avoid this end point, which is the Dr. Manhattan sort of sitting by himself on Mars, right? The way that we avoid that because it might suck us in without us noticing, is to constantly recultivate that beginner's mind. Okay, great, hankering. We all know, I mean, it's not like we didn't listen to the last 15 minutes of the podcast over here figuring that out. Like, yes, we get it, dude. So how? How do you cultivate the beginner's mind? And this answer is the tough, actionable issue of this episode. Now, we're going into a whole second season of the RPG Mainframe, and I will be coming back to this again and again and again. And that's why it was an important piece to lay down to the sort of, sometimes I imagine the RPG Mainframe like a cool old-timey like lecture hall, like where, Dr. Frankenstein would like show you how to reattach an arm or something. I imagine that scene. And in the first few classes of that semester, this concept needs to get just written in stone. There should be a tablet on the wall that all of us to sort of cultivate this RPG Mainframe kind of mindset to get the most out of what it is we want to get the most out of, which is our hobby, right? Okay, we all start to agree. Sure, yeah, I want to do Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. That sounds really, really floofy. And yeah, Dr. Manhattan as a negative example of the other end of what can happen if you don't keep the beginner's mind. Yeah, okay, Hank, you've made a pretty good case. I see that I kind of don't want to wind up like that. Don't be the sort of late stage hater who looks only to the past where good things are. The present has not. You've always heard like these kind of curmudgeons who say like, oh yeah, there's no more good bands. Very similar mindset. All bands today are just imitations of bands from back in my day. Just like, oh, God, bleh. Okay, so you agree with those premises. But how do you get that? How do you do it? I get your call to action. I'm in. How do I do it? And here's the tough answer. You've got to put yourself in uncomfortable situations as far as learning, as far as doing projects, and here's the wildest one, and the one that's going to be the hardest for all of us to do, with people. Now, this is my final concept for the pod today. It's one thing to pick up a new role-playing book, right? So when I got really into the One Ring, it must have been 2 months ago or so, I just was beside myself with excitement about this book. But then, as I start to set up some GM notes, maybe make a few creatures, try out a couple of combat roles, like we all do when we're trying to get to know a system, there's this discomfort right away. Well, what's that? How do I... So this number gets detracted from 20 and then I'm still rolling high because, okay, wait a minute. So the 1 and the 12 are now symbols and I'm like, well then how do I parry? Like, or what's the parry value? Oh man, I don't know. This is like kind of spaghetti. Right there, you're uncomfortable. But it's just you and a book, cup of coffee, little time on the couch, maybe in the local cafe, or if you're lucky, right here in our golden wizard chairs here at Runehammer, you're just sitting there scratching your chin and thinking. Okay, that's a pretty lightweight form of discomfort. Then we've got the second level, and this is applying techniques discomfort. So you've got all your stuff that you rely on. I know y'all. I know more than half of you, twice as much as I should. And I know less than half of the other half of you, a little less than you deserve. But I know a lot of you. And you got techniques. You got go-tos. You got things that you know work. This difficult call to action today asks you to go outside those. This is like asking me to let a group go to town and not put any time pressure on it, right? For almost 10 years now on the internet, I've been telling people, never have a scene in D&D where there's not time pressure. But for me to remain in the beginner's mindset, I need to go there. I need to go, as they would say in Dune, to that place where you dare not follow, right? Where your established knowledge is no longer of use because you are on the borderlands. You're out in the, what do you call it? The the antipodes. You are in the antipodes of your own knowledge and your own expertise. And that is where the fertile soil of your beginner's mind is to be found. Okay, so those are the first two types. Then the third type, and this is really where I want to holler at you. And this is where I personally am getting my trial by fire as we speak. Last week, the week before, this week, all through December. And that is finding that beginner's mind with the people that you interact with. And on one level, this means straight up, here it is, meeting new people. And I tell you, not only is it one of the hardest things that you can set out to do, just because of the way we're wired, it's also present events and present context of our modern world are definitely not really helping when it comes to meeting new people. Be it the sort of digital age, be it, current events putting people on edge, being it the mood of your town, countryside, or city. It's not easy to meet new people. It really isn't. And if somebody says it is, they're probably trying to sell something. And I don't mean meet new people by saying howdy doody. I mean know their name, know a little bit about them, and a little bit about their sort of style. What's their mark, their brand. And I think doing this is the scariest and most rewarding thing you can do when it comes to cultivating the beginner's mind. Because you can't play on all this subtext and, past conversations that you've had when you're working with new people. You need to be who you want to be in the moment. There's no free buckets here. And this is where the beginner lives and thrives, is this kind of first time feeling and showing up with that sort of cordial respect that you feel for new people. And this is a tip of my hat, too, to con players out there who wind up at tables half the time not knowing two or three of the players at the table, but putting their best foot forward to give those newcomers to them space to role play, appreciation for their different styles and odd personality quirks, or maybe their strange little physical affectations. Some people, want to have like a giant water bottle on the table and stuff like this, And when you're getting to know somebody new, you don't necessarily just holler at them about it. You kind of try to give them a little bit of patience, right? Don't be that guy. And that little bit of patience, that is, again, that's the beginner's mind talking. That's you going back to the beginning. You're no longer the expert with your players that you've played for 10 years. You are sitting in complete unexplored country with unexplored people. And I think there is a lot there. Now, this doesn't mean throw away all the cool things you have. Don't overtake this advice to make it crazy. Dr. Manhattan is so extreme on the other end of this spectrum. I don't think a lot of us ever even will be able to, thankfully, mercifully, comprehend this sort of woe that he exhibits, because he doesn't feel it, right? He exhibits it, which is very weird about him. He's kind of like emotionless and yet so mopey. Like, yo, Dr. Manhattan, for a dude with no emotions, you sure are emo, man. What's up with that? Why don't you come down off Mars? We got like 4 dudes coming over tonight, and we need somebody to pick up the beer. So, and I don't mean make beer materialize, bro. No. I want you to travel by normal means, go to the store and spend your $23 on some beer and bring it over to this session. So obviously I have a little bit of a hidden agenda here, right? I want people to try new systems. I want people to break out of their comfort zone. And I want people to return to WotC D&D. Oddly enough, we live in a time now, those are similar things. Trying out new RPGs and returning to D&D 5.5 have converged. We've come full circle. We have the unpopularity trend against D&D makes playing it for like the OSR community or the indie community the exact inverse of what it used to be. It's so crazy. And I think that all of this stuff blends together in a positive way when that beginner's mind is brought to bear. When you leave Dr. Manhattan on Mars, don't be like that. Don't do that. Don't let all your expertise and your knowledge bar you off from a good time with someone you don't know playing a system that you've maybe heard this, that, or the other thing about. My guess is 3 times out of 4, everything you've heard about a system will have almost no bearing on how that game goes. Right? Oh, man, I heard Pathfinder's so crunchy and cumbersome. Oh, man. No, you're 20 minutes into a session with some Pathfinder people. You're having a great time. And your so-called knowledge about Pathfinder was working against you, and you didn't even notice. So I want everyone to just kind of revel in that and take a look at your own patterns with our hobby. And, sometimes this hobby can be almost compulsive in its nature, right? Like, we are driven to do this, especially for the folks that I know so well out there. We're driven to it. We're not just casually doing role-playing. It's kind of day in, day out. Our friends and relatives are going, dang, man, you are really into this, bro. What's up? What's up with you? So as you continue to take that journey, give yourself a little bit of time to look at where Dr. Manhattan is creeping in and opportunities to go find that beginner's mind and be that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, clueless player or the GM who's going outside their comfort zone. And this is a familiar message for the RPG Mainframe, right? But I felt it very foundational to put out in the open before we explore Season 2 of the RPG Mainframe, which is where you're going to see me wandering all over the map, not just talking about my techniques in, say, Index Card RPG, or my techniques, my published ideas in Viking Death Squad, or in Crown and Skull, but rather wandering across the sort of role-playing osphere into games like The One Ring, or even Free League's Alien game, which when it came out, I was super critical of it. Did not like it. But given a year or so to keep kind of going back and flip through, think a little deeper, try some of the dice kits, starting to love it more and more and more. It's like growing on me. And I want to make that U-turn. I want to do that 180-degree turn and dive into it. And this is why this episode right here, searching for that beginner's mind endlessly, and gods above and below forbid, even returning to D&D itself. Wait a minute, Hankerin. Isn't your whole career as a publisher just as a counterpoint to D&D? You're betraying your vow to the ancestors. Sure, maybe so. But I want to be a beginner again. I want to flip around and look for the equipment page. I want to forget the mastery tag on a long bow, right? I want to forget what vexed means when I get my mastery activation on that short sword or whatever. I love that feeling. What are the bonuses you get from your background choice? I don't know. Let's look it up. There's something really fun about that, bringing you all the way back to the beginning of not knowing. And that is where we are going to journey in this oncoming season of the RPG Mainframe. We're going to go to the Antipodes. We're going to go to the Borderlands, to the edge of the known galaxy in this hobby of ours. And we're going to find some super fun guests along the way. And we're going to learn a bunch about ourselves and how to get the most out of this crazy daily life of storytelling and building and crafting and writing and drawing that we all dream of. So I hope you'll join me on that journey, and we're going to leave Dr. Manhattan, poor bugger, on Mars all by himself to stare at the stars, being sad that he's not seeing fresh starlight and losing sight of the fact that he's seeing all those beautiful twinkling lights. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We're going to be doing some Mailbag Day in episode 74, so you do not want to miss that episode. And we are going to be wandering all over. So thanks a lot for joining me. This has been episode 73 of the RPG Mainframe. My name is Hanker Infernail. Old Ingrid Bernal here, coming right at you live and direct from Runehammer headquarters in the mighty city of Philadelphia. Y'all take care of each other and yourselves, all right? And I will see you soon on that old internet. I'm out.